The Associated Press announced that they're no longer going to refer to climate science deniers as deniers. They say we're not going to call them climate deniers or climate science deniers, and we're also not going to call them skeptics, climate science skeptics. So let me give you exactly what they say here. Quote, "Our guidance is to use climate change doubters or those who reject mainstream climate science and to avoid the use of skeptics or deniers." Here's their reasoning. Some background on the change. Scientists who consider themselves real skeptics, who debunk mysticism, ESP, and other pseudoscience, such as those who are part of the Center for Skeptical Inquiry, complain that non-scientists who reject mainstream climate science have usurped the phrase skeptic. They say they aren't skeptics because proper skepticism promotes scientific inquiry, critical investigation, and the use of reason in examining controversial and extraordinary claims. That group prefers the phrase climate change deniers. For those who reject accepted global warming data and theory, but those who reject climate science say the phrase denier has the pejorative ring of Holocaust denier, so the Associated Press prefers climate change doubter or someone who rejects mainstream science. All right, so what they're saying here is we're not going to call them skeptics because that gives them too much credit. A skeptic is somebody who actually cares about science and debunks horseshit. We don't want to give them too much credit, so we're not going to call them skeptics anymore. And then they say on the flip side, we don't want to call them deniers either because that's too pejorative. It has the ring of Holocaust denier. So let's drop that one too. So drop the term that's too favorable to them, drop the term that's too much against them. So what's my take on it? Do I think this makes sense? Why or why not? I agree with them for one of their points. The other point, I totally disagree with them. I agree with them on the skeptic point. Because on the skeptic point, it's true, you're giving them too much credit. Skeptic, for the longest time, has had a positive connotation. Like, oh, you're a skeptic. You don't buy into voodoo horseshit. So, that's right, you shouldn't call somebody who's wrong on the science a skeptic because they're wrong. Skeptic, insofar as it actually has a positive connotation, should not be used to describe people who are wrong on something, and it's provable, it's demonstrable that they're wrong. Now, on the flip side, I wouldn't stop calling them deniers, because I think the Holocaust denier argument is made up. Nobody who's ever read, X, Y, and Z is a climate science denier or a global warming denier. Nobody who's ever read that has gone, are they a Holocaust denier too? I can't tell the difference. I see the word denier. Never happened. I'll go as far as say, nobody who's ever read an article on climate change where in the article they reference deniers, nobody's ever read that article and said, even if it just said deniers, not global warming deniers or climate change deniers, nobody's ever read that article and gone, wait, did I miss something? Are they talking about Holocaust deniers now? That's never happened. Because if the article was all about climate science, they get it. When you mention deniers, you mean climate science deniers. So why am I not in favor of dropping that one and continuing to call them deniers? You ready for this? I hope you're sitting down. Because they are deniers. They are climate science deniers. They are global warming deniers. They're not Holocaust deniers, but nobody called them Holocaust deniers. You made up that some people think that you're talking about Holocaust deniers because you use the term denier. That just doesn't make any sense. That's like saying, isn't there a NASCAR driver, Kyle Petty? That's like saying if, you're talking about politics and you bring up Kyle Kulinski, like you're afraid that people are going to say, what does the NASCAR driver have to do with this? Why are you talking about Kyle Petty? But nobody ever thought that. Nobody ever said that because those are two different Kyles. It may be the same term, the same word, the same name, but it doesn't mean the same thing because they're different people. So if you talk about denier in the climate sense, it's true. They're deniers of climate science. If you're saying in the Holocaust sense, they're not that. Different topic. So the thing is, you know what this article smacks of? False equivalence. They have to try to be 50-50, so what do? They say, well, this term gives them too much credit. Skeptic gives them too much credit. But denier is too harsh and too pejorative. So we'll get rid of both of them and we'll, use the fucking mouthful of those who reject mainstream climate science or climate change doubters. No, see, this is, and let's be totally clear here, this is that whole PC culture that we talk about all the time run amok. Because this is like, okay, how do we take into account people's feelings about this when we phrase these things? Why the fuck should that matter in any way, shape, or form? It should just matter Is the term accurate? Is it true or not? Skeptic is not accurate. It's not true because they're not really skeptical. They buy into bullshit. That's not a skeptic. Denier is true, so you should use denier. So it just bothers me that we still got this 50-50 nonsense going. It's not an open debate. It's not an open question. It's not, hey, somebody just brought up climate change. We must study it now. No, we know what's happening. We have the data to back it up. Decades and decades and decades worth of data. So call it what it is. And call the people who are wrong about it what they are. They are deniers. There's no problem with saying that, and everybody should say it and not play this PC game.